Morning glory and evening grace, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. There's a lot ahead today, including more conversation about whether or not we're in an AI bubble. NVIDIA reports its results next hour, and I'll bring you that. It's either going to be more champagne or a whole lot of downtrodden people. But before we go there, I want to conclude a conversation I began a couple of weeks ago with Amit Segal. Amit, of course, is one of Israel's leading journalists. He is the author of this book, A Call at 4 a.m., which I inhaled about 3 weeks ago. And Amit was here for part one, and then we both ran out of time, and we said, let's get together and finish the interview. And since then, a lot has happened. Amit, welcome back. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for
Before
hosting
we
me.
go back into the details that I wanted to cover about the call at 4 a.m., there's a headline. There are two headlines out of Israel today. One, looks like war is resuming in Lebanon, or at least a lot of bombardment of Lebanon. And two, the Commission of Inquiry. Would you tell us what you think is going on in Lebanon, and then tell me what you think is going to happen with the Commission of Inquiry?
So, Israel marks a year to the ceasefire in Lebanon, which was the most successful ceasefire in Israel's history because Israel kept attacking Hezbollah without a single response. However, the plan to actually reduce Hezbollah to ruins relied heavily not only on the IDF but on the Lebanon army. And this Lebanon army failed to actually stand up to its commitments. It's actually heavily populated, it's full with Hezbollah supporters, and that's why the U.S. lost patience, and as a result, the U.S. pressures Israel to attack Hezbollah, thus signaling to the Lebanese people that it cannot get away with it. So what I see in the next few days is 2 or 3 massive days of attacks, hopefully in a way that would convince Lebanon to resume dismantling Hezbollah. As for the national
that would be
committee, we hope.
That would be
as
a
for
good
the national, hopefully, yes. As for the committee, Netanyahu doesn't want the Supreme Court president, which he sees as a leftist, anti-Netanyahu judge, to actually select the members of the committee. So he wants either to legislate a new bill that will enable the parliament to actually have a committee, exactly like Congress did following 9/11, or to have another option, which is a governmental committee with members selected by Netanyahu himself. I have to admit that all of the 3 options are quite bad in my opinion, because it would lead not to a thorough investigation that would help Israel to avoid such disasters in the future, but it would actually politicize the process, which has already been contaminated. So to be honest, I don't see any good solution at sight.
Well, I mean, I only have one opinion. I'm not an Israeli. I'm not a Jew, but I did follow closely the 9/11 Commission. Of course, everyone in America knows about the Warren Commission. My old White House boss, Fred Fielding, was a member of the 9/11 Commission. It actually did good work. The trouble with having a commission of inquiry set up by the Israeli Supreme Court, to me, I teach con law in America, I don't teach Israeli constitutional law, is they're part of the story. Israel was divided because of the Supreme Court's action. So whether or not you think those actions were right, the Supreme Court's part of the story in the division of Israel prior to 10/7. I don't know how they could possibly be objective about what happened on 10/7 and who's to blame for not being prepared. Is that a widely shared understanding? Because that seems to me to be an obvious conflict of interest that everyone from the left to the right would recognize. We can't have the Supreme Court set this up.
It's widely shared by the Israeli right wing, and that's why the Supreme Court suffers heavy losses in terms of its standing within the Israeli public. It has been politicized, in my opinion. You said that you cannot teach constitutional law in Israel because you're American. However, even Israeli professors cannot teach constitutional law in Israel because there is no such thing. They actually they invented a procedure that allowed them to actually outlaw a basic law, which is part of the Israeli constitution, based on who knows principles, super constitution principles, something like this, which does not exist. No one knows where to find it. So I fully agree with you. However, I don't think that the solution for the politicization of the Supreme Court is to have a government committee which is selected by politicians on the other side. So we need to find a new trick to actually pave the way to an independent investigation.
You know, I'm looking for, I have no opinion on that because it's not my country and I don't know enough. I only know what I've read in books. But whatever you come up with, I'm going to study very intently for comparative politics reason. And that brings me back to a call at 4 a.m. This is really a book about comparative politics. And I've recommended it to so many people who want to understand Israeli politics are not like the United Kingdom. They're not like the United States. They're not like anything else anywhere. And I have 6 more questions to ask you to complete my interview, and we'll hopefully get them all in. First one, you wrote, no one-man list can outlive the one man. Now, I want to ask you to explain that to the audience, what a one-man list is, and part B of that first question, Avigdor Lieberman. Is he a one-man list? Because to me, he started this whole political nightmare when he didn't join the Netanyahu coalition 5 years ago. But let's start with the no one-man list can outlive the one man. Explain what that means.
Okay, so in the States, you can elect Donald Trump for president, or I don't know, Ted Cruz for Senate if you live in Texas, and many, many other examples. In Israel, you never elect persons. You never elect a man or a woman. You elect a list. So you, even if you think you vote for Netanyahu, you do not vote for Netanyahu, you vote for Likud, for the entire party. Netanyahu is number 1 on the list, but it doesn't mean that he is elected by you. That's why we don't have constituencies. However, because Israelis live in the era of personal politics, so they fell in love with the idea of electing Netanyahu, Lieberman, Lapid, etc. So they cheat themselves, thus electing parties by thinking that they vote for the politicians. For instance, Avigdor Lieberman that you mentioned, he is the leader of Israel Beitenu. He sets the rules, he elects or selects or nominates the number 2, 3, 4, 5, 11. But if Lieberman resigns tomorrow, so there is no such thing as Israel Beitenu because he's no longer there. If Yair Lapid, if something happens to Yair Lapid, God forbid, so there is no such thing as Yesh Atid. So what it does for our system is a disaster, because the entire parliament, which was supposed to have 120 members, became like a theater of 5, 6 very important politicians, and the rest are fingers for hire.
So let me ask you about Lieberman. He's been always an interesting character to me. What happens to his voters when he gets hit by a bus or retires? Where do they go? Do they go back to Likud?
Okay, so here's the thing about Israeli immigrants from the former Soviet Union. When it comes to security and diplomacy, they are more hawkish than Ben Gvir. That's why Avigdor Lieberman used to be part of the right wing and a staunch right winger. However, since the debate in Israel shifted to identity, whether Israel is more Jewish than democratic or more democratic than Jewish, so in that respect, Lieberman's voters are more secular than the far left. So that's why Lieberman found himself as the strongest opposition to Prime Minister Netanyahu. And to be honest, I don't think that something is about to change, even if Lieberman resigns.
Huh. Okay. Question number 2. You quote Moshe Dayan, famous in America as he is in Israel, saying to Ariel Sharon, "You'll be called in only when there is a catastrophe." Is there any other person like that left in Israel that everyone would turn to in the middle of a catastrophe like 10/7. It seems to me Netanyahu, had he been on the sidelines, would have been summoned in, but he was already there. But
Exactly.
is there someone on the off stage in whom most Israelis have great confidence in a military sense?
Unfortunately not. Moshe Dayan or Ariel Sharon were two figures. Netanyahu, let's you know that Yahya Sinwar planned the October 7th attack. He had scheduled it before to October 6th, 2022, when Yair Lapid was prime minister and Netanyahu was the head of the opposition. I guess that if the October 7th attack would have occurred 1 year and 1 day before, Netanyahu was this man to be called only under catastrophe. However, the catastrophe happened on his watch, and therefore, to be honest, I don't see any figure like this in 2025.
So it's not Naftali Bennett.
No, he can actually earn politically from the situation, and he's gaining ground in the polls, but it's way too early to say. I mean, his support emanates mainly from the center left these days. So it's not like Sharon that all of a sudden, from being an infamous politician, became a consensus. He got the support of 62% of the Israelis in the
That's
election of
wild.
2001. So no, there is no one that gets even remotely close to this situation.
I think question number 4. At the end of a call at 4 a.m., I was under the impression there is no left in Israel, that the left is gone.
Right.
They might have haaretz and they might have a few coffee klatches and debating clubs, but they're gone.
Yeah.
Am I right about that, that they're just not a viable political force in Israel anymore?
You are absolutely right when you speak about the left in terms of Palestinian statehood. The number, by the way, is 5.5% of the Israeli public, which it used to be, by the way, closer to 30 years ago. So it vanished.
Wow.
But in terms of identity, there is a significant center left consisting of, for instance, Lieberman and Bennett and Lapid. So the path to victory for the center left is to base its policy not on compromises to the Palestinians, but about, I don't know, public transportation on Saturdays or sending the Haredi youngs to the army, things like this.
You know, you've got job security for life. Your political system is so kaleidoscopic that you are never not going to be working if you want to. Okay, question number 4, page 40, you write, or number 5. Israelis are, in many respects, just another frightened Jewish community in a 2,000-year-long chain of frightened Jewish communities, even if they are larger and more independent than those that came before. Now, you wrote this book before 10/7. Do you still believe that after the astonishing march of, it was a disaster and a massacre on 10/7, but the IDF and Mossad and the government has just amazed the world since then. Do you still think it's true about the frightened Jewish community in a 2,000-year long stretch of frightened Jewish communities?
Even more than October 7th. You know, many people compared the October 7th to the Holocaust. But to be honest, it's more similar to the pogroms,
Right.
organized or spontaneous massacres in Eastern Europe in the 18th, 19th, 20th century. This was a pogrom in Israel, and yes, it's even more valid than when I had written it in the first place because no one envisioned back then in 2021 or 2022 that 5,000 terrorists are going to just storm into villages, behead babies, rape women, torture males. We just heard today about a hostage named Guy Gilboa Dalal that said that he was sexually attacked by his hostage takers. So yes, I think it's still valid.
All right. So that penultimate question. I read Herzl's book after 10/7 for the first time. And I've kind of known Israeli history from the Balfour Declaration forward, but I didn't know about Herzl and the Switzerland thing. Do you think Herzl dreamed big enough? I wrote a column for Fox this week. Israel's a superpower. It's a nuclear and intelligent superpower. It's America's strongest ally. It's got the longest reach, the hardest power. Do you think Herzl ever dreamed that the Jewish state he imagined would become a superpower?
Um, he thought about Israel as a soft power, a European soft power in the Middle East. What he envisioned was a sort of a German speaking European country with people with ties and hats and not this Middle Eastern country. And he believed that this country would be established peacefully. That's why he actually would the emperor of the Ottoman Empire met with many Muslim leaders. I don't think he imagined that in order for Israel to live and to actually prosper in the Middle East, it would need to have nuclear bombs or the strongest air force in the Middle East. But I do think that although Herzl spoke only German, he would be so happy to see Israel these days because it's way more than he envisioned. To see Israel with 10 million citizens, with a large Arab minority, with a GDP that actually outnumbers Germany's and the UK's and France's, it's something amazing even for me in 2025, let alone for Herzl in 1898.
It is really a remarkable story. Last question. I love this line in A Call at 4 a.m. more than any other one because it applies wherever politics is free. Page 59, quote, "Politics is a storyteller's festival at a Galician marketplace." I get it. Would you explain it to people? Because I think it's perfect.
Okay, so there are people who think that politics is about like an Excel table in which you actually check which leader would offer you more tax deductions or would fight, I don't know, crime better. I don't see politics as such. I think that in order to win an election, at the end of the day, you have to gather enough people around you. And the way to do it for human beings is to tell a persuasive story. Now, I'll give an example. Obama told the American public a story about colorblind America, in which everyone has
Yep.
an opportunity. Trump told a story about America, which is about to collapse if he's not elected. Netanyahu told a story about a superpower in the Middle East that can fight and defeat its enemies. And so on and so on. Now, for Jews, storytelling is our this is the art of our forefathers. So this Galician fair of Thursdays and Mondays is exactly this very same thing. And in that respect, it's still so interesting for me to see what is the story told by which politician. And I think Israel is the best storytellers in the world.
Yeah, you and I have the best jobs for our country. I've done this for 35
Oh,
years, and I think politics is
absolutely.
endlessly fascinating, the best job. But I want to ask, I finished with a bonus question. You
Yeah.
point out repeatedly that the question at the center of Israel, are you a Jew or are you an Israeli? Amit Segal,
Right.
are you a Jew or are you an Israeli?
I'm a Jewish Israeli. But to be honest, I'm I thought yesterday about this miracle of Israel being established in 1948 against all the odds, against seven armies. I'm the third generation of this country. I used to take it for granted. Following October 7th, I remind myself every day that there is a reason why we're here. And the reason we came to Jerusalem, where I'm speaking to you from right now, and not from Uganda or Argentina, like many Zionists thought, was because this was the biblical land of Israel. So the answer for your question is, first and foremost, I'm Jewish.
Well, I appreciate the answer. I want to again tell my audience A Call at 4 a.m. Wonderful book. I look forward to hearing you on the Insider Edition of Call Me Back,
Oh,
Dan
yes.
Senor's fabulous podcast. And I look forward to having you back on the show soon, Amit. Thank you for your
Thank you
generous
so much,
amount of
Hugh. I
time.
really appreciate it. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Bye bye.